Hello, I thought I was going to start with one of the more serious and probably the more adult discussions related to David Weiss's Flat Earth Clock app. And it deals with the friend finder, which is this feature right here. Part of what I do at work is to manage some websites, and we have to be not only proactive, but we also have to respond to edicts from above to say that we have to apply various security patches to our websites when said vulnerabilities are exposed and become serious enough that the whole world pretty much has to drop what they're doing and upgrade all their servers. And so security, or rather computer security, is something that is always in the back of my mind. And when I was looking at the friend finder feature on this web app, I got a whole bunch of really bad vibes from it. And so I thought I would share some of my findings with you and later talk about some of the ways that we could improve it and hopefully make it a little bit more safe and secure for the users. So this is an example of one of the things that I found along the way. And so I'm going to start off with the area where I happen to live. So I went into the friend finder and I just started tapping on some of the little blue dots that you see on the map. And as you click on it, there's a little balloon on the bottom that shows up where you might need to subscribe to just be able to send messages at all. But in the process of doing so, I've seen aliases. I've seen someone had entered their username. I've seen someone has entered their email address, and I've also seen somebody enter their real name. What is displayed there was the input field that was required to be able to use the friend finder, and there is a configuration page, and I'm just going to show that here. But it's not restricted to just your general location. You can go anywhere in the world. In fact, at this point, I'm going to show you a screenshot that I took of somebody that I found somewhere in the States. I'm not going to say what town, what city, what place, and I'm even going to hide their name. But as you can see, whoever last used this app was probably sitting in their backyard, and I would probably venture a guess they were sitting in a lawn chair or some such thing, and across their fence is somebody else that has a pool. So this is something that is just ripe for exploitation by some very disturbed individuals, shall we say. And so I'm going to start off with a few quotes that I've thought of along the way. Otto von Bismarck has stated, "Only a fool learns from his own mistakes. The wise man learns from the mistakes of others." There was a version of that, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, but somebody else has said, "A smart person makes a mistake, learns from it, and never makes that mistake again. But a wise man finds a smart man and learns from him how to avoid the mistake altogether." And the quote that I remembered from a long time ago went something like this: "A fool doesn't learn from their own mistakes. A smart person learns from their mistakes, but a wise person learns from the mistakes of others." And so I thought I was going to reword that slightly and apply it to this situation. While a fool does not learn from their own mistakes, but a smart person does, it takes wisdom to seek out others' mistakes and to learn from them. And so there's definitely a deficiency in the application related to security. And I thought that it was going to be so important that I actually wrote notes, and you can just follow along on the screen. The Flat Earth Clock app relies on people to enter a username. And as I've looked around, some people enter personally identifiable information, such as their real names or email addresses. And this can be a really bad thing if it's used in the wrong hands, because there are some very disturbed individuals who don't really care about the welfare of other people, and they can become quite dangerous. The app also requires people to choose whether to reveal their general location or not, and I would say that this is just my opinion at this point. The application seems to default to the precise location reported by the phone. So as always, the app puts the burden on the people to be mindful of their own security. And that's actually a dangerous position to take because people are the greatest security vulnerability. It's generally, for the most part, it's not an application, it's not a system that is the weakest link, it's rather the people. And so an example of that is right now we have 2048-bit encryption, I think is the standard. They might have upped that to 4096 bits encryption. It doesn't matter how many bits you throw at it. You could have 40 gazillion bit encryption. It's completely irrelevant if people use easily guessed passwords such as password 123 or the word password. So asking people to manage their own security is not the best course of action to take. The other thing that I see about the app that I find somewhat disturbing is that it doesn't seem to do anything to protect users' privacy. Mr. 42 put out a video a little while ago where he found a URL that with anybody with a browser can just go to it and get access to the information that is available on that Friend Finder page so that you wouldn't even need the application in the first place to get the information. That seems to have since been fixed, but all I did was I paid the equivalent of $4 and a little bit, and I got a copy of the app, and I could go around and start doing something nefarious with that. So while the app has gone to some small efforts to protect users' privacy, it doesn't seem to go far enough as far as I can tell. And the other thing that I find equally disturbing is that it pretty much implies that you need to have the GPS security setting enabled to let the app know where you are in order to use the Friend Finder feature, or even just simply to get the updated weather reports. So I was kind of thinking, how could we go about modifying the application to provide the same or similar functionality while preserving the safety of its users? And so there's the user who uses the app, and then there's the app itself. And the conclusion that is relatively unanimous in cybersecurity circles is that users cannot be trusted to manage their own security. And what it means is that, well, people are people, and there's always going to be someone in that group willing or incapable of protecting themselves or protecting their information online. And here's an example. So you make a banking website, or you make some website so hard to use that you need to have at least a 12-character password. You have to have upper and lowercase letters, special characters, numbers. You can't have the same character repeated side by side like that. So you can't have like the lowercase o and the lowercase o together. You make a password requirement so complex that someone who's in their 70s or 80s required to do their banking online has to enter this information in. Well, you can't expect somebody like that to remember such a difficult to remember password, and so they will almost certainly write it down somewhere. And in fact, a lot of people will write it down and put it on a sticky note on their monitor, which ultimately defeats the purpose, because if somebody breaks into the house and they find this, they could very easily see that, oh, look, why should I rob this house and get away with $100 of jewelry when I can just turn the computer on, get onto their bank account and transfer money to my own bank account and get $1,000 or $5,000. So people are incapable or unwilling to protect themselves online. And the other thing is that you cannot trust somebody to handle their own security as a way to compensate for the deficiencies of a poorly designed site or application. I mean, that's basically given. So you have to remove users from the equation when it comes time to providing any level of security on a website or a web application or an application in general. So it therefore becomes a de facto standard to protect a user's privacy. And if we apply some of the more common security constraints to an application like this, how can we go about providing similar functionality while minimizing exposure of sensitive information of its users? So the point of having the Friend Finder is to be able to have like-minded flat earthers find one another. And if flat earthers really want to go out of their way to find others that are nearby, I'm not going to stop them. But that can be done easily enough and safely in other ways that can get the same job done without violating users' privacy. So one of the ways to do that would be not necessarily to have a list of every single city, but probably relatively large cities, so the main urban centers, and have the equivalent of like a town hall or like a town square or something like that. And it could be the default geolocation of the city itself, which is, I think it's usually represented by some geolocation in the downtown core. And most people will recognize that if you say, what is the geolocation of, let's say, Los Angeles, you're not necessarily going to get some address out in the burbs. You're going to get probably somewhere downtown somewhere. So this town square or town whatever could be placed automatically from various sources. And if somebody happens to be out in the middle of nowhere and they want to set something similar up, they could just simply push a button and say, I'd like to petition Dave to open up a town hall or a town square right about here. And so that could be something that Dave could just look at and say, yeah, okay, sure. And then at that point, it would just be added to a database somewhere. And so the next time anybody nearby wants to join in on the fun, they could see that there's a town square or a town hall already there, and they could just say, yeah, I'm going to choose that one. So users should have the ability to enter their location as being a default setting in a public area around where they live. That helps anonymize where they are relative to everybody else. And what's kind of disturbing really is that the application does not make any distinction between information that is entered as being required to use it versus what is going to be displayed to the general public. And people are people, and some people will see that as, oh, well, I need to enter in my name, or, oh, I have to enter my email address, or, oh, I can put whatever I want. And that's what I've seen. I've seen people look at that as, I need to enter something that is used to identify myself to the application, but I don't want to enter something that is personally identifiable. I'm just going to enter some garbage information, and that's what I'll use in this app. So the app should make a very clear distinction what is going to be shown publicly versus what is required to identify oneself to the application. And so that could be in the form of a username or whatever else. And one of the ways around leaking information versus protecting users from not really knowing what's going to be used for what purpose is to clearly delineate information that is required. So let's say, for example, the whole goal would be to require somebody to enter in a unique username, and that username can be anything arbitrarily. So in order to discourage people from using their email addresses or their names themselves, one could provide a registration form where the whole goal is to enter your name here, enter your email here, enter a username over here, and then you could have a little description. A username is an arbitrary token that is used to identify yourself from everybody else. And the username has to be unique. So you could use some kind of short but descriptive language to describe the fact that this is intended to be used as a way of identifying you to the system, and it just simply has to be unique. It can be anything. And if you just simply wanted that username without providing first name, last name, or email address, the application could just simply ignore that and use the rest of the information. And then that way there, it kind of tricks people into categorizing their information into a box that will never really be used in the future. And another way that the app can protect someone's identity or to protect someone's information is to allow them to use the application without requiring a GPS reading at all, ever. So basically, an alternative to using the GPS reading that the device would provide to the application should allow someone to just simply say, hey, I live in Ottawa, or I live in Vancouver, or I live in Los Angeles, or I live in New York, and that would be the end of it. The application should allow you to be able to just select a city like that, or if you really want to, you could maybe just enter in a geocoordinate. And in fact, the application could force the user to enter in the degrees of latitude, longitude, and one decimal place. So for example, it could let somebody say, I live at 43.6 degrees latitude north and 97.4 degrees longitude west. Given what I've seen in the past about the security considerations that David Weiss has implemented in his Flat Earth Clock app, I have to conclude that he is not security oriented. And as a result, users who are also not security minded can potentially leak information that would make them vulnerable to exploitation in the real world. And if somebody were to ask me whether it would be safe to use this Flat Earth Clock app, the short answer I would have to give them would be, without going into too many details, I would recommend no. And the longer answer would be, there would be certain steps that the user would have to be very mindful of taking in order to ensure that their privacy is maintained and that the burden of their privacy remains on them completely and not on the application at all. So that's going to be it for now. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, I would like the thumbs up, the subscribe if you're not already. Comment below. Let me know what you think. All that other good YouTube stuff. And with that, I'm going to see you again in another video soon enough. So bye for now.